Nathan Malimban is a leader among our students, both in the classroom and in the extracurricular choir, the tennis team, and the soccer team. He is an Archon and is preparing to be a freshman next year at Brown University. So I am very honored to introduce our co-valedictorian, something that we try to avoid doing unless it absolutely must be done. And I'll tell you, in this year, we just had no other choice. So, without further ado, I will introduce another man who stands as the embodiment of the integrity and intellect of the class of 2013, Nathan Malimban.
Those of you who know me reasonably well, or at all, may expect me to start my speech with some sort of pun. So, without further ado, let me stop beating around the bush and get down to brass tacks. Just kidding, there was no pun there. But I've been told that if I say things in a certain pun voice, that people torment themselves trying to find a pun where it does not exist, and that's really fun for me. But as much as I'd love to, I'm not here to speak about puns. I'm here to address the class of 2013. I'm here because, class of 2013, we are graduating from high school. Chandler Prep has been hectic, emotional, stressful, but ultimately rewarding and invaluable. We've done it. We've survived the college application process. We've completed a remarkable number of challenging courses. We've conquered the senior thesis. And from all this, we emerge victorious, with diplomas in our hands, smiles on our faces, and perhaps a vehement desire never to wear khakis and polos again in our lives. There are so many memorable and amazing moments throughout a CPA career that it's hard for me to list them all. It's impossible. But if I had to choose, I would say that my favorite part about CPA, and I really mean this, is being a part of my graduating class. We have become such a closely knit class over these past years. We have become a family. And it's not just that we have a small class size that makes us close. It's not just that the hallways are so narrow that we're close. There is something more profound to our solidarity. I believe that the way we have been shaped as individuals these past years has made us grow closer. Allow me to explain. I think the Chandler Prep experience is, in many ways, analogous to a section experience, something to which any student here can relate. We don't select our sections. We are never in a section with our 20 best friends. We are never in a section with 20 people of our specific choosing. But since we have to spend the next 9 months with these people, we make the best of it. We come to appreciate our section, even if we don't make a conscious effort to do so. Inside jokes develop, section spirit flourishes, and we find ourselves a part of a unique section dynamic and experience. Everything about our section, from our particular human letters discussion style to the general feel and demeanor of the section, really begins to fit us, including the section t-shirts that we make after they should be washed. We discover to love the quirks and idiosyncrasies of our section. We come to love a group of people that, initially, we would have never chosen to be a part of. And in hindsight, we would not have had it any other way. And I say this from personal experience. It's the same on the larger scale of CPA. We are required to take many classes that, initially, we would have never chosen of our own volition. We are asked to drop all preconceived notions in humane letters when discussing literature in order to examine the literature free of personal bias. As mentioned, we are assigned each year sections with random people. In each of these cases, we are confronted with the unknown and challenged to appreciate it. And we rise to this challenge. We find ways to appreciate and love these novel experiences, whether big or small. Maybe, from choir class, you discovered a major yearning to pursue music in college. Or perhaps you discovered that music is not your forte, but you fell in love with a spiritual that you sang at your concert. Maybe after reading Shakespeare, you were inspired to be, or not to be, a playwright. Or perhaps you just simply discovered that you love Shakespearean witticism. Whichever the case, we develop a determination to face the unknown in the hopes that ultimately we will find something to appreciate. In this way, not only do we gain a broader exposure to various fields of study, not only do we emerge with a greater array of passions, but we learn to seek something that we love in those things that do not immediately pique our interest. We discover new passions because now we are vigilant in them. There is greatness in the unfamiliar, and we have learned, we have taught ourselves to recognize it. And we apply this mindset when getting to know our class. We are each very unique individuals, but we get along because we find something to love in one another. We have varied personalities, convictions, and ideas of fun, but we come to love and appreciate and celebrate these differences. And because in finding excellence in one another, we are necessarily introduced to new interests, hobbies, mindsets, and ideologies, we are ultimately and inevitably shaped and influenced by one another. I personally have been changed immensely by you, class of 2013. I would not harbor such a passion for choir if Nathan Hill had not dragged me into the choir audition room at the end of 9th grade. I would not frequent the tennis courts with such alacrity if Kelly had not persistently pestered me to join the tennis team. I would be a less philosophical person if Julia did not discuss with me philosophically almost every day. I could go on. Kelsey, you have caused me to love reading again. Ryan, you have changed the way I view movies. Juliana, you have caused me to become a more thoughtful person and a deeper thinker. I have been influenced, inspired, and impassioned by so many of you. I have come to appreciate a greater variety of passions and ideologies, and I thank you for that. And I hope that I too have influenced you, even if just to instill within you an awareness of puns. And if you caught the last few puns of my speech, then I have done my job. We have all been shaped in innumerable ways by one another. We are not merely classmates. We are not merely students whose paths crossed in high school. We are shapers of each other's lives. We have left indelible marks on one another's souls. And our influence on each other, on our entire class, is so great because we have learned to find merit in one another and to celebrate these meritorious aspects. And our influence is positive because we have learned to seek and value what is excellent. This, I believe, is why we have such a close class. A small class size merely gives us the opportunity to know one another. But Chandler Prep has taught us to love one another, and we do. And by finding excellence in one another, we are shaped by one another, and we shape one another. It breaks my heart to have to meet every single one of you. We are so tightly knit that I feel that I am not leaving a mass of vaguely defined individuals. I am leaving a group of unique and discrete people. I am not leaving a class of 2013. I am leaving Andrew and Priya and Tayaba and Natalie, and so on. But this is graduation. This is the night when we celebrate the completion of one stage in our lives in expectation of beginning yet another. sad as it is to go our separate ways, we must look to the future. So, I leave you with this advice. Continue to find excellence in others. Strive to find beauty in whatever you do, in whatever club you join, in whatever book you read, in whatever movie you watch. Expand your horizons. Try wildly new things and discover new passions, and learn to love more than you currently love. Stay true to who you are, but improve and develop who you are. If you continue to seek for the good in everyone and everything, you will undoubtedly be influenced positively. Be sure to show appreciation to those who have helped you to discover your passions, your teachers, your coaches, your parents, your siblings, your friends, and to help others in turn to discover their own passions. For in doing this, you will shape and be shaped by your own. Class of 2013, you mean the world to me. I love you guys immensely, and I sincerely could not have asked for a better group of people with which to spend my high school career. Make the most of college, but be back in town for yearly reunions, okay? Each and every one of you is great. So let us celebrate not only the deeds we have accomplished, but also the people we have become alongside one another. Class of 2013, congratulations, for we have graduated from Chandler Prep.
Lieutenant Wolfe is a veteran of 3 branches of the American Armed Forces going back 16 years. He graduated from the United States Air Force Academy and served in the United States Army, where he served in the Iraq War and won a Bronze Star. After leaving active duty to join the Navy Reserve, Lieutenant Wolfe returned to his native Midwest to pursue doctoral research at Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo, a highly regarded center for medieval studies, and teaching on the faculty there while working on his doctoral research on the Christianization of medieval Scandinavia. Proficient in multiple languages, including Latin, Greek, Anglo-Saxon, and German, Lieutenant Wolfe assures me that it was easy for him to earn the highest possible rating on the military's proficiency test in the modern Icelandic language because, in his words, he was just like old Norse. He has written academic and popular articles that have been published in scholarly and military publications across the nation, including Chronicles and Proceedings of the United States Naval Institute. Adam Wolfe is a scholar warrior, the likes of which it is very difficult to meet these days, and I am honored to welcome him to the podium. Lieutenant Wolfe.
I wish I had gone first. There's a couple of hard acts to follow. Headmaster Hayes, thank you for inviting me here to address these graduates. The usual message of a high school commencement speech is one of starry-eyed optimism. Now, the students I saw last year at Veritas and this year at Chandler inspire me with hope. But make no mistake, you graduates are entering a world in crisis. I speak not of the clash of civilizations, which is as old as the children of Cain, nor do I speak of Gaia taking vengeance upon humanity for its sins against Mother Earth. If our problems could be conveniently blamed on one portion of humanity, or if the human race itself were the scourge, the solutions would be equally simple. Either war, revolution, or some sort of engineered pandemic might be in order. Beware of anyone who offers you such a simplistic, intellectually lazy view of the world. Far more troubling than the fashionable crises du jour is modern man's insistent refusal to think beyond the present moment. And consider a mark of how bad things are that almost everyone would assume I speak of the future as the missing element in our calculations. On the contrary, modern Homo technologicus, obsessed with real-time, on-demand wireless services delivered to the palm of his restless hand, cannot grasp the future quickly enough. And whatever one might say of those who, right after one election is over, obsess over the next one 4 years down the road, one cannot accuse them of ignoring the future. But this orientation toward the very next thing creates a manic state of mind. Nearly 2 centuries ago, that unsurpassed observer of America, Alexis de Tocqueville, called this restless absent-mindedness the greatest vice of the democratic mind. Eerily enough, he seemed even to anticipate Facebook in his observation that in a mass democratic society, every man thinks he's engaged in great endeavors and that everyone must be watching him. Preoccupied with his present activities and his plans for the immediate future, the democratic man does everything in haste and has no time to master anything. With no time to contemplate the roots of things, he insists on knowing very quickly rather than on knowing well, as the Tocqueville put it. He is content to get his opinions ready-made from whatever source is at hand. It was a phenomenon documented as early as Plato's critique of Athenian democracy, but de Tocqueville had a sense that in early America he was getting a foretaste of what was in store for the rest of the world. Our intellectual poverty, then, has nothing to do with the number of schools we have or our iPad to student ratio. Uprooted from the soil, unconnected to the generations before his own, democratic man is adrift in time. The demos, having abandoned God and jettisoned tradition, could eventually honor no other principle but mere number. That is, we end up worshiping ourselves. As Richard Weaver noted 60 years ago, one would think from the frantic attempts to cut ourselves off from history that we aspire to a condition of collective amnesia. Let us pause long enough to remember that insofar as we are creatures of reflection, we have only the past. Or, if we are to be thoroughly democratic, let us, as G.K. Chesterton suggested, give votes to the most obscure of all classes, our ancestors. Tradition, he said, refuses to submit to the small and arrogant oligarchy of those who merely happen to be walking about. Students of Chamberlain, the great books of Western tradition, very books you have spent so many years absorbing, temporarily free us from this oligarchy of the present and direct our attention to the past. In doing so, they help curb this infatuation with ourselves and teach us humility, as the first valedictorian so eloquently expressed. In truth, when we immerse ourselves in the great books, we do not then look backwards so much as reorient ourselves to the past so that we look forward into the past. That is not as strange as it may at first sound. In the book, The Well and the Tree, scholar Paul Bauschatz argued that none of the pre-Christian Germanic peoples had any concrete sense of the future as a distinct period. And even today, the English language suggests as much in its lack of a dedicated future tense. Instead, we get along with auxiliary verbs that continue present actions or suggest intent, like is going or will. The cultures that produced Beowulf and the Eddas, Bauschatz argued, had only 2 categories of time, past and non-past, or what is coming into being. I realize, of course, that it might trouble you graduates to contemplate the idea that the future does not exist. What more effective way could I devise to keep you in high school forever? But I think most people are apt today to think of themselves facing the future the way we drive a car. There ahead are all the places you will go, only occasionally remembering to check the rearview mirror of the past. But we cannot actually see things yet to come. As Weaver reminds us, the future is only a screen in our minds on which we project combinations of memory. The ancient Germanic mind then was oriented not toward the future, but toward the past. It is as if a man were standing in a doorway, looking into a dimly lit house, with the wind whipping up behind him. Events of the present, unexpectedly rush up from behind him, borne by that wind, and enter the enclosure, becoming part of the meaningful past. Other events do not enter the house, but go around it. Events such as what you ate for breakfast today tend to lack significance and make no mark upon history. But it is hard to detect what is significant until it is past. Even ordinary daily events may occasionally take on great and lasting importance. Such a mind recognizes the present moment as all flux and confusion, filled with irrelevant details. Only the past has any strength or solidity to it, and that past constantly pulls more time into itself, receiving events until that moment when we ourselves enter the enclosure, passing the threshold of death. The past becomes more, not less, significant. What a contrast to the modern view, in which the value of a thing is largely defined by its recentness. And what a sobering thought that you graduates, instead of driving on past these years, only occasionally remembering to look back, might instead be oriented toward these years at Chandler always, ever learning more about the significance of what you experienced here. For even if we face the past, we know little about it. Most of it lies hidden from our eyes, yet we know it shapes the present. Hence the frantic search of the Norse god Odin to learn what is coming into being. In his words, we hear an echo of our own struggle to understand the hold the past exerts upon us. I know that I hung, he says in a howl, on a wind-rocked tree, 9 long nights, wounded with a spear, offered to Odin, myself to myself, on that tree of which no man knows where its roots spring. These ancient words suggest the elusiveness of our goal and the sacrifice we must pay to pursue it. Odin himself had to lose an eye, sacrificing half his ability to see the present, but he gained priceless wisdom, knowledge of the runes, the very embodiment of the recorded past. The gnawing sense of uncertainty one encounters in Norse literature is a rebuke of modern man's overconfidence. In the future-oriented world, the focus is on desire. In the past-oriented world, the focus is on wisdom. So the truly great books of the Western tradition are not important because they can conveniently fall into some sort of intellectual toolkit we can use for whatever purpose we devise. There are many grounds on which the great books can be defended. But not the least of them is that in getting us to orient ourselves, even momentarily, to the past, they draw the focus away from ourselves. This orientation toward the past rather than the future is no mere relic of tribal culture. From the first pages of Herodotus to the last lines of Ammianus Marcellinus, the great historians of Greece and Rome were all concerned with preserving the great deeds of the past, good and bad, not only for memory's sake, but as the best guide to present conduct. Don't let anyone tell you these works are irrelevant or beyond the grasp of ordinary people. When I was serving in the army in Iraq, the words that resonated most with me didn't come from some trite management handbook or facile sketch of globalism. The books to which I returned were written by classically educated Greeks and Romans who had been there 2,500 years before me. Men like Xenophon and Herodotus, those who understood culture and religion and honor. There was a sergeant in my unit. He knew of my interests, and he kept trying to get me to see the movie 300 about the Battle of Thermopylae, and I refused. I said, well, I don't need to see a live-action cartoon. I've got the real account here in my hands. Kept on. Sir, you gotta see this movie. I will convince you somehow. Finally, I said, all right, I'll watch the movie if you read Herodotus. And I thought I had him, but this high school dropout from the inner city, a soldier whose intellectual horizons were defined by video games and movies, set out to read Herodotus with great diligence, and he was hooked. And as he neared the end of the book, he started getting a little nervous, remembering the bet we had. But when he finished, he set it down and he said, "Sir, I'm not going to make you watch that movie. I understand now." And that sergeant, despite all the demands of the war around us, went on to devour anything I could give him. Thucydides, Xenophon's Hellenica, the Anabasis, Arrian's campaigns of Alexander, all of Plutarch's Greek lives. He became better read than many a classics major. And there in Iraq, we had conversations on life and leadership more profound than any I've encountered at the university. His life would never be the same. Sadly, at a time when knowledge of this classical heritage is there for the taking. Most Americans are content to view the past as merely the prologue to themselves. Students across this country are fed a steady diet of ideology in which history is merely the long struggle for rights on the part of the downtrodden. The past, then, is something to be overcome. History has been repackaged to suit the tastes of today's fashionable victims. Shame is to replace pride, tolerance, too often used to silence opposition, and diversity often serves to mask what is in fact the most crushing intellectual conformity. Any genuine study of the past can be unpleasant to the tender-minded, as Richard Weaver noted, for it teaches sharp lessons. The very possibility that there may exist timeless truths is a reproach to the life of laxness and indifference, which modern egotism encourages. And de Tocqueville couldn't help but notice that while ancient historians taught that to be master of his lot, man requires only to be master of himself, modern historians teach only how to obey, for according to their books, we are at the whim of forces only the state is powerful enough to manage. The great task of our time, de Tocqueville said, is to raise the faculties of men, not to complete their prostration. And he warned that if this doctrine of necessity, as he called it, were to spread, the intellectual contagion would paralyze society. Today, that paralysis is nearly total. A different world is taking shape, of a kind unknown to the ancients. It is a world at once sanitized and hideous to behold. A world bent on removing every physical discomfort, no matter how slight, while ignoring the soul. It is a world in which men are eager to destroy, but afraid to give offense. A world in which the only heresy is the claim to know truth. As I look out across America, the great arts academies appear as beacons of light in a gathering intellectual darkness. You give me hope, just as you give hope to your teachers, your parents, all those whose work have made this school possible. Your education should make you wary of the false promises of the modern world, but neither can we afford despair. Odin, when he hung on that tree, screamed as he took up the runes, and he fell. But afterwards, like you, he could say, Thou namek frevas, o frauder vera, then I began to bear fruit, and to gain insight, o vaxa, o velhavas, to grow and to prosper. Orth mira forthi, orth letari, word following word, I found myself words. Vet mira verki, vex letari, deed following deed, I wrought deeds. You will work many great deeds, students of Chandler. Of this, I have no doubt, for you have turned yourself in the right direction. Godspeed.